Hi, and welcome to another episode of New Every Day on the road with Carrie
and Jen. And on today's show, we're doing part 2 of prickly situations and what you do when you find yourself between a rock and a hard place. Stay tuned.
On the road. We are still in the Mojave Desert. We are headed to hike somewhere else, and we thought we'd just turn the camera on and chat with you. We've had a number of interesting situations so far. One of them was when we were climbing, and Jen decided to go through, well, actually, I kind of peer pressured you to go.
Well, okay, here's the whole story. At the Red Rock Canyon, we decided to go through Calico Rocks, and we came to this one place. We were kind of bouldering, and I said to Carrie, I will, just step on me, right? Step
Hoist
on
my
my
shoulder.
shoulder.
I had to get over this big rock.
Right. And so then she got up there.
Like a boss.
Which was great. She did a great job. But the problem was,
I couldn't hoist Jen up. So we had to find another way for Jen to get through, and there was this tiny, tiny pass through this huge boulder that was stuck between this crevice and then the wall. So literally between a rock and a hard place.
Oh my.
And so I really just encouraged Jen to get on through there.
All right, Lord.
Here comes Jen. Nice. If you stay low, it's wider.
I promise.
It's very skinny in there. Jen, you're doing great. Okay, I'll get out of the way.
The problem is I can't push myself. I don't know how to push myself. That's the problem.
Can you army crawl?
Well, there's no room to army crawl because right now my shoulder's at both sides.
Can I pull you? Oh dear. Are you going back?
I don't know. So
Jen eventually made it through. Yay, Jen. And we were thinking about a Bible story that correlated with that. What were your thoughts, Jen?
Well, it really made me think about when God called the Israelites out of Egypt and led them towards the Red Sea. And so I'm just going to read that passage. And this is in Exodus 13, starting at verse 17. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter, for God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road towards the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt armed for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him because Joseph had made the sons of Israel swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. After leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day, the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to guide them at night. Give them light so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Hiroth, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around in the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself, though Pharaoh and all of his army and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt had told was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officers changed their minds about them and said, "What have we done? We have let the Israelites go, and we have lost their services." So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him, and he took 600 of the best chariots along with the other chariots of Egypt, and they pursued the Israelites. And it goes on to say that as Pharaoh approached, this is verse 10 in chapter 14, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out of the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord. The Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on the dry ground." It goes on to say that then the angel of the Lord, who had been traveling in front of the Israelites, withdrew and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud also moved in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. And it says, then Moses stretched, this is verse 21, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove back with a strong east wind the sea, and turned it into dry land, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, and a wall of water on their right and on their left. There's so much in that passage, and that's when we were wiggling through that spot in Red Rock Canyon. That's exactly what made me think. I was between a rock and a hard place, because Carrie had already gone up. She was up on the crest, and I was like, how am I going to get there?
But I had a different perspective, because I could see that, yeah, you're really going to make it. You can fit.
Yeah, and she was right there. She was encouraging me through. And but what made me think about this passage, and there's a couple things that I think we should touch on. The first being, one, God called them.
Okay.
God called them out of Israel. He heard their cry. In chapter 1, it says that they were terribly oppressed. And so God heard their cry, and he sent them a deliverer. And so I love that aspect of the story, that God does hear our cry, and when the time is right, he delivers.
You know what I picked up as you were reading that was that Joseph prophesied beforehand that, one, they were going to be in trouble and need God's deliverance, and two, that God was actually going to deliver them, and they were to bring his bones out of Egypt. I think that's amazing. He knew ahead of time because God told him.
Right, because, and that probably goes back to the previous promise that God had given to Abraham, who said, your descendants will go into slavery for 400 years, but I will bring them out. Yeah. So it was very interesting, because God had prophesied that, or had given that word to Abraham, who must have passed it on. And there is Joseph, 4 generations later, passing it on, and that had been passed on for 400 years, right? And that's just like, isn't that cool? How
no broken telephone.
No broken telephone. Like, it just, the word that God gave Abraham endured right through like 400 or 500 years, and it came true. Isn't that interesting? We don't like to think that God would take 500 years to accomplish something, but he did, which can be a little daunting when you're praying for something and you want something to happen, and the thought of that we might not see it in our lifetime can actually be quite discouraging. Mm-hmm. But it's just one of those things where we have to trust that God's timing is perfect.
Well, in the New Testament, I want to say Hebrews, when they're talking about the people of faith from the Old Testament, they said they only saw the promise from a distance.
Yes.
Abraham saw the promise of God bringing them into the promised land from a distance. He didn't actually get to experience, and neither did Moses, actually.
No. No, and that would be Hebrews 11, where they go through all the stories of the men and women of faith who knew the promise, but hadn't experienced the promise. So that was the first thing that came to our mind, was the fact that God heard their cry, and he responded by sending Moses as their deliverer. But secondly, that God was faithful to his promise in what he had told to Abraham, which had been passed on to Joseph. And now Joseph was saying, this is going to happen. And it did. And there was God delivering his people. Mm-hmm. The second thing that comes to mind as I read that passage was the fact that it says that he did not take them by the easy way.
Because then they would have encountered war.
Yes.
And they would have lost heart.
Isn't that interesting? Even though they went up ready for battle, they thought they were ready for battle. But they weren't.
No.
Which is like, sometimes we can think that we're like, oh yeah, I'm ready for this situation. And that's where pride sort of comes in. Like, oh yeah, I can handle this. Like, bring it on. I'm ready. And God is saying, no, you're not ready.
Yeah.
And we can be wondering the same idea. Why is this taking so long? Like, I feel like God is calling me to something, and yet it's not happening. Yeah. And it's like, come on, I'm ready. And the fact is, you're not ready. Mm-hmm. And we have to trust in God's perfect timing in that moment to believe that God really does know what he's doing, and that he is going to look after things.
Yes. I totally agree. I'm taking a detour.
I see that.
Hi, I'm Robbie Ferguson, and I love being a Vimeo Pro member. As a web broadcaster, I need an affordable video hosting platform that's as flexible as me. A pro membership lets you upload up to 20 gigabytes of HD video each and every week with no additional bandwidth restrictions. That means if you produce a show that uses even up to 20 gigabytes of storage, your limit resets itself the following week, so you can do another 20 gigabytes. And keep doing that week after week. Now, Category 5 with all of our shows use roughly 10 gigabytes per week. From there, Vimeo automatically generates all the files that you need to provision your RSS feeds, Roku channel, website media player, or even video downloads in multiple bit rates, with no limits on your bandwidth usage or how many people can access your files. What's best? The price is astonishingly affordable. And for a limited time, friends of the Category 5.tv network will receive a whopping 25% off the annual price. All you have to do is go through our link, cat5.tv/Vimeo, and sign up today for your 25% discount. To top it off, you get 30 days to try it risk-free. If you're not happy with Vimeo Pro, you pay nothing. The deal is only for a very limited time. Go to cat5.tv/Vimeo.
All right. So we just had a bit of a detour.
And now we're back.
We did some hiking on some rocks and had a spot of lunch. And here we are back on the road and talking about how the Lord had led the children of Israel out of Egypt, and they had went up ready for battle, and God said, no, you're going to give up if we take you the easy way. And he actually led them to the Red Sea. And they get there and they hear the Egyptians coming, and it's like, why have you led us this way? Like, they were so very upset with God.
And Moses.
That it's like, were there not enough grapes? Were there not enough grapes in Egypt for us? And, here God is delivering them, and they're getting upset with the way that God is choosing to deliver them. And he literally has led them to a rock and a hard place where, to their mind, the only way out was death.
Right.
Like, if they go forward into the sea, they're going to die. If they face the Egyptians, it's interesting. They were ready for war against the other nations, but, the thought of fighting the Egyptians just totally melted them. They were not ready to fight the Egyptians. And so here they are, literally between a rock and a hard place. And I've thought, in my life sometimes, you know, those prickly situations where I've thought I was between a rock and a hard place. And I remember being at a youth event once, and I'm the leader, I'm the main leader, I'm young, I'm in my early 20s, and we were at this hotel, and I was with some of my girls, and the security guard came and knocked on the door and said,
I don't know this story.
you guys have been throwing stuff out the window. And I'm like, not my girls. Like, I know these girls, they're not throwing stuff out. And he was quite upset. The girls were just like, what? And I remember going upstairs and finding my leaders who were all in their mid-40s. And I remember walking into the room, and I said, I need an adult. And they all looked at me, and they're like, you are an adult. And I said, no. I need a real adult. Like,
That's what you said?
yes. Someone with some real life experience who knew how to handle themselves. Probably someone, I had some, you know, some of my male adult leaders were like 6'4", in their 40s, had presence, or maybe 6'1", but had presence. And I'm like, I need you to take care of this. And they just simply looked back at me and said, Jen, like, you're the leader, you are an adult, you can handle this. And I was just like,
Are you serious?
and I literally thought I had nothing, no possible way could I do this. And I failed to see that God had actually placed me in a position of authority where I wanted to give up my authority, give up, you know, the place that God had put me in. And I wanted to give it away to someone else, you handle it, rather than actually turning to God and saying, God, I am the leader here and I need some help, and we're going to turn left.
Ooh,
And
hold on.
Lord, could you please help? And it was very interesting because I went and I took care of the situation, but it was just like in that moment where I really felt I was between a rock and a hard place. And so
That's really interesting.
I was
hadn't heard
so
that story.
in that moment, I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't know what to do. And that's what we kind of mean where you're between a rock and a hard place, is that you just simply don't know what to do. If you go one way, you're going to get slammed. If you go another way, you're going to get slammed. And you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a position like that? Like maybe at work or with some friends at school?
Oh, yes. And usually, if you're working or have friends with a group of women, it usually has to do with like hurting feelings. You know, if you say something, if you speak up, one party's going to be upset, but the other party might be pleased with you. And then if you do the other thing, one party might be upset and the other party's not going to be pleased with you. It's really hard to navigate those kind of social waters sometimes. But I certainly have had things at work where if we go one direction, the person might do really well. If we go the other direction, they might do really well. And just unsure. I can't think of a specific example right now, but I know I've been in those positions and asked God for guidance and what we should do.
Right. And that's what I think is the key point there is we get into these situations because we're human and we work with humans and we want to make the right choice. We want to make the best choice. We want God's kingdom to come. And it's like, I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm stuck, like literally between a rock and a hard place, like the Israelites felt with the Egyptians on one side and the Red Sea on the other side. And yet, Moses says, just stand still.
Oh yeah, I did say that.
Just stand still, and God will fight for you. And in those moments, I don't feel like standing still. I feel like I should do something rather than just being at peace.
Yeah.
And letting God do the defending, letting God do the providing and making the way and being the guide. I want to conjure it up. I want to make it work for me. Like, I want to see it now.
So what do you think the difference is when it says in the Bible, and I want to say Ecclesiastes, there's a season for everything. There's a time for war, there's a time for peace, there's a time for sowing, there's a time for gathering, there's a time for action, and there's a time for you to sit and wait.
Mm-hmm. I think in that moment where they were between a rock and a hard place, the Lord gave the word, right? He gave the word to Moses, but
I'll fight for you.
I'll fight for you. And I love it because that's all they did. They stood there, and the pillar of cloud and fire zoomed around to the back of them and protected them from the Egyptians. Yeah. And then the Lord caused the wind to move the water and to make the path. And so the Lord protected them, and then the Lord Lord provided
A way out.
a way out.
You know, I think of a friend of mine who she was actually going through, I want to say, ovarian cancer. This was a number of years ago. And the verse that the Lord gave to her was in Isaiah, and it said, "In quietness and confidence is your strength." And he was telling her, you know, you can go for this treatment, this treatment, this treatment, but just know that, like, be quiet and confident in my strength, and I'm going to help you get through this.
I agree. And so on that note, we're going to pause.
Hey, we're back again. We have to take little detours to make sure that we're on the right course.
That's right. And
So
go ahead.
We were just wrapping up, right?
Yeah. And so just like we talked about the fact that God had led them out into between a rock and a hard place, and they were waiting to know what to do, and he defended them and he provided a way. And he said, just be still. Be still. And so we don't know where you're at today, and maybe you feel like you're in the midst of making a huge decision, and you feel like you're between a rock and a hard place. We want to encourage you just to seek the Lord. If he tells you to be still, then be still. And if he tells you, no, go ahead, move ahead, then move ahead and trust that he really will provide a way for you, that he will protect you, and he will, part the waters as he did for the Israelites, so that they could move forward. And so we encourage you just to trust the Lord,
Maybe I'll pray for us, Jen. And
Sure.
Father, thank you that you always provide a way. You provided a way to get to you, to be restored in our relationship to you through Jesus Christ. I thank you for that truth. I thank you for the promise that you're preparing a place for us in heaven. I thank you that you can give us wisdom that's from you. And sometimes the wisdom of the world is not the right words to follow. But wisdom from you will help us to find the right way. And I pray, God, that you would help us and our viewers to read your word and to trust that you're going to guide us according to your word and for your glory. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So we want to say thank you for tuning in today. And if you have a moment, check out our sponsors page, and there's a variety of ways there that you can support us as you go about doing a little bit of shopping, and check out patreon.com. I can never remember.
I think it's .org.
.org.
Go to our partners page, neweveryday.tv, and you'll find out there how you can support us, and there's other resources there as well. And we'll see you next week. We'll still be on the road.
Catch you later.